Welcome to the Bridge of Truth. My special guest this evening was actually one of the first to appear on the Bridge of Truth. Her name is Sheikha Mariam Kabir Fai, and she has returned this evening to talk about Sufi guidance for conscious travelers on the spiritual journey. Before we begin, I'd just like to note that we are recording this just a few days after the attacks in France. So I welcome Sheikha Mariam because obviously people's natural reaction now, and you can hear it already, is retaliation and revenge. And neither of those things would seem to be representative of what you describe as being a conscious traveler. So I think I'd like to begin with just having you comment on the events and whatever you may offer in terms of guiding us to handle it from the Sufi perspective.
So I will begin with a prayer, the opening. It is called Surat al-Fatiha, which means the opening. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdu lillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Amin. Peace, peace, peace be with us. Peace fill our hearts. May peace guide our path. May peace lead us to the source of peace. Peace and light, mercy and love. This is my response to the events, now and always, that when we see merciless acts being done by human beings anywhere, under any circumstance, the very best thing we can do is travel on the journey to the source of mercy and surrender our entire being to that love and peace. And the love and peace is unconditional. It is not for one group of people. God did not create one group of people and say, you are the ones upon whom my mercy will be bestowed. And the message that we have all received, which itself brought me on the Sufi path, in the heart of Islam, is that all of the prophets and messengers from Adam to Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon all of them, came to bring the light of guidance, the light of truth, the light of mercy to the world. Our problems at this present time, and they have appeared throughout the ages, are that people are not surrendering to the source of light. And so when we see these galvanizing forces manifesting in devastation, cruelty, killing, we know that it's the opposite of what true Islam is, and it's the opposite of the truth of what all the prophets and messengers brought. So we are going to be investigating what the prophets and messengers brought, because we do this all the time, day in and day out. We turn back to the source of peace, searching for that peace, not for ourselves, for every living being, for every life. And one of the things that Sheikh Bawa Muhyiddin, radiallahu anhu, guided us to do is to love all lives as your own. So I was deeply affected by this message, and it is a message that the world really needs to comprehend. It is also said in Islam that if you kill even one person, it's like you killed all of humanity. If you save one, you saved all of humanity. So we must be the light bearers and the savers of lives. In order to save another's life, you have to come to know yourself. So the essence of Sufism, the essence of the spiritual journey that we are on, is to come to realize your true nature in the presence of the one who created you for a purpose, for a divine purpose. So I'm going to begin with a slight description, a small description of what the waging of war means in the context of the Sufi path. And this comes from Amar Bawa Muhyiddin, from a book called Enough for a Million Years.
For somebody who might not know, who
Sheikh
is that?
Bawa Muhyiddin radiallahu anhu is one of my greatly beloved and exalted sheikhs. And my journey has been for many, many years to be living in their presence and to be receiving the light of wisdom from these beings who are now on the earth to carry the message of the prophets into the present time. And Bawa Muhyiddin was finally guided to Philadelphia, and his mazar is in Philadelphia. And he's written many books about this subject, and one of them is called Islam and World Peace. So it's from this point of view that I begin this discussion, because I think these words being together is profoundly significant at this time and at all times. And it's also hidden from the view of the world to many people. Of course, there are millions and millions of Muslims and others that know it. But what we see on the media stage is, of course, the opposite. So how do we cannot conquer that force of darkness with weapons of destruction. The light is what dispels the darkness. And so this interview will, from our deepest intention, be to bring forth that light within ourselves and within the people who are listening. It's not going to be that everything that I believe, you will believe. It is going to be that we will unite in the light. And that is the name of my website. It is called uniteinthelight.org. Now, the more and more that beings who love the light, who are submitted and surrendered to the grace of God, to the beauty, to the love of God, join together across all barriers to unite in the light, the more that the light will shine through our collective surrender. So that is why we are making this interview today. It's to awaken within ourselves and others the deep intention to do this good, to do this wonderful thing that we as human beings can do, because we were created with a purpose and by our Lord, and that is to worship and serve the one of infinite grace. Now, what is happening in the name of Islam at this time, I humbly suggest is the opposite. And instead of going out with weapons to fight these people, I want to send these messages of light into the world, because the light will dispel that force. And the media...
So you believe then that by enough people holding on to the thought that just the intention of having the evil dispelled will actually create the...
That is a very good question. We are creating a spiritual community of light bearers. And we need to enter into the fields of light, the realms of light. Light will dispel darkness, and God is the sovereign leader of all, and he is infinitely merciful and compassionate. So let us say that more and more people, and it may start with 1, 2, 3, or 10, or 20, and it just goes out. It spreads like light in the universe. Like it does after a dark night. You wake up and you see the rays of the light penetrating through the worlds in your own perception. And then you say, that night that I was in was not permanent. That was not a permanent reality. And one of the things I want to talk about as Sufi guidance for the conscious travelers is that each and every one of us and all of us together have to pass through such nights. Sometimes it's called dark night of the soul. And when you make it through that test or challenge, as humanity is facing right now, you come to see the horizon, the dawn, the light of the dawn rising on the other side of the dark tunnel. And so I want to encourage us all to focus on the light as we hear the news, and don't lose sight of it, because this is a temporary and very distorted impression. And at this moment, I'm going to talk about the Sufi understanding of war within Islam.
Okay.
And it is based upon the teaching of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessings be upon him, who came back from one war of defense in the time of the very early days of Islam coming into being. And when he came back with his companions, and they had fought in a small, or, a defensive war, that's what I want to say. And it was, not like what we see today. He said, now I want to teach you about the greater war. It is called the Greater Jihad. So from the beginning of this interview, we need to focus on what does that mean?
Right.
And what would he have meant? And so I'm going to read what Sheikh Bawa Muhyiddin, peace and blessings be upon all the prophets and those who come after them to teach the same message. It says, to wage war within oneself is Islam. The real fight is an inner one. To dispel evil qualities, evil thoughts, and the differences that lead to separations is Islam. To wage war upon jealousy, envy, and vengeance is Islam. To cut out and discard the qualities of Satan and to fill ourselves with the qualities of Allah, most merciful, is Islam. To show a heart full of love to our brothers and sisters is the wealth of Islam. Have good thoughts in your lives. Have good manners, good behavior, be polite. Have good actions, be good. Have love and be patient. Never think of harming others. Only think of helping people. Think that others should be made better and that you should be made better. That is how your heart should be. Always wish good things for other people. If you do, then your life will never be ruined, and you will progress higher and higher, and your brothers and sisters will also become exalted. Please think about this. Ameen. May God give you his grace. So that's the starting point, and that is what I was talking about, is that the more living beings that tune in to that path of goodness, the path of wishing the best for one another, we will get the benefit of that wish, that intention, that service. And the very word I mentioned is, in Arabic, it's ibadah, which means to love, serve, and worship God. And how do we do that if we disregard his creations or kill them. If we kill innocent lives, there's no way that we can be representing God most merciful.
So how do you feel that that idea of the greater jihad could have become distorted to the way it's some people interpret it to,
I
to
believe
motivate them for these
This is
evil
a
purposes?
very ancient story. This is not new.
Right.
And it starts with Cain and Abel, if not before that, because our history is limited. We can't really say how long have these stories been told and what is the meaning of
Well,
them.
I'm referring specifically to the passages
Right.
that you're interpreting one way. They're
Right.
taking the same passages and interpreting it in another way. And that's true for all religions.
Sure.
We're just talking about this now because of the timeliness of the events that have happened. But throughout the ages, you're right. Religions have been distorted.
Not only religions, there's a battle between darkness and light.
Right.
And going back to Cain and Abel, that one brother felt that he was entitled to kill the other brother. That's the source of the killing of humanity. And
So that was like the first religion, then, if you want, what was happening in.
that was the first context for the incomprehensible act of a human being killing another human
Because
being.
it's moral, and religion is all about your interpretation of
And
morality.
religion seems to have two sides, definitively. And one side is light, and the other side is dark. So throughout the ages, I know my son is getting his PhD in religion, and he's pursuing that. And so we've studied, the history of religion, for example, in Jerusalem and across the planet. Wherever the force of good comes, there's also another force there that will take the name and completely distort the reality. So it will be the opposite of what the truth is. And it's part of the challenge offered to mankind to determine the difference. In other words,
Yes.
now I was born in an agnostic family. I was born in Hollywood, California, and we've talked about this before, and I was an actress at a very early age, and my family was liberal Jews, but basically agnostic. That means they didn't actually believe in God as I do. They didn't have the understanding or feeling that such a God was to be worshipped or existed. It was maybe veiled from them because they weren't atheists. They just didn't see it and they didn't say it, right? So what did then inspire me to make the journey that I made across the earth in search of spiritual awakening? And where did it lead? So where it led to was illuminated beings in different countries. Now, it was, I lived in monasteries of different types and studied the religions. And in every case, it was a format for light and illumination that I found. Then, at a certain point in the journey, I met my first Sufi master, and that was about 40 years ago. And since then, I have become a very religious person in a very deep sense. And so that religion is the very source for me of the light of God entering, inspiring, and guiding me. And so that's what religion means to me. What religion means to the people who are doing these absolutely unholy acts is, I would say, absolutely the opposite. And that's how I generally introduce myself as a Muslim. Now, the root of the word Islam is truly peace, which in Arabic. So we know that there's much more to be discovered about it that is not being told. And I think that's why we're having this discussion. And more people who have received the blessings of it should not only speak about them, but definitely manifest them. So, and it says that if you kill one life, it's like you killed all of humanity. But if you save one life, it's like you saved humanity. Therefore, each and every one of us who has been who has been so blessed to receive the grace of God in any way, has a moral obligation and inspiration to save lives, to share love, to care and share that beauty and grace with every other being that we encounter on the journey. And that's the way that we move from the dark side to the light side.
Yeah. As you were talking, and I've been thinking a bit about this myself to prepare, the modern teachers seem to, whether it be non-traditional forms of spirituality and modern philosophers, they generally teach as well an approach that would be similar, although not necessarily spoken by one of the great spiritual teachers, of the past. But that is that we, rather than go to our natural instinct, which is to focus on the fear aspect and dwell on the negativity of what is happening and to react negatively, that in the process of doing that, we are actually then manifesting what we fear. And that what we really need to do rather is to focus on what we want or see as the positive, as you're saying. And it's interesting when you look back at some of the past great teachers. I was thinking specifically of Jesus when he taught about turning the other cheek. It's one of the most powerful of the teachings against revenge. And to think that our natural reaction is not to turn the other cheek, but to strike at the other person's cheek. I hope that somehow in that process we can make things better and they won't attack us back. But that generally just escalates more and more violence. And that now seems to be what has happened with more and more groups. I mean, it began with, the first Mideast war in the early 90s and before that, obviously, but in the modern context, and now it seems like it's out of control.
This is a challenge and test for humanity. And each one of us has a certain amount of time here in this world before we make our journey to other worlds. So I think that we need to very much focus on our own inner work, which is called here the inner jihad. So we're not fighting an external enemy. That thing which is motivating the people to do these horrendous, totally unholy, unimaginable, incomprehensible activities, so disregarding human life, is a manifestation of that which directly opposes God the Merciful. And so what is happening is like a showdown to some degree or other, it would appear. It's beyond our comprehension, so nobody can say, I know what's happening. I'm only saying that my response to this and every other thing that manifests externally is to go deeper inside and seek for wisdom and guidance. So I'm suggesting that instead of taking more weapons, and I'm sure that there's a war machine at work in the whole complex of it, so that everybody who believes in weapons celebrates their usage in one way or another, or gets benefit and momentum out of it. So I'm saying peacemakers unite. That and another sheikh that I've worked very deeply with, Sheikh Ali, is Sheikh Ali Ndao from Senegal, is creating peacemaker conferences around the world. And I recently was traveling in California and I found circle upon circle of children dedicated to making peace. And when he makes the conference, he celebrates those people who have come to this earth, even in this, recent times, such as Muhammad Yunus and Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba radiallahu anhu from Africa, and Muhammad Yunus is from Bangladesh, and they mention Mother Teresa. The question is, how did those people respond? Martin Luther King, Gandhi. Okay, let's consider how the peacemakers responded to their difficulties.
They were the models, and yet somehow we just don't seem to have learned that lesson.
But we're still learning. We're learning. We're on a journey, humanity, together. Yes. So I remember watching a movie in which there was a little scene of Gandhi when he was riding on a train. I think it was in India, and he was being mistreated. He went through a real trial, and he was suffering. You could feel his own personal resistance to this mistreatment, and then he woke up. He woke up and realized what the mission was, realized what his mission was, and was transformed into the missionary of light and peacemaking. And it's not a mission like, people who go to other countries and take possession of the people of that country. We don't go to another country and take over. We walk to the supermarket and see who's there and give them love. The last time I was in the market, one of the cashiers came running to me with a rose. She knew, because this is the nature of our relationship. This is what we do. And I'm saying that when you see the kind of war that we are fighting is to overcome the qualities within ourselves that would make war against anyone else.
Yeah, because what you were just describing is exactly the approach that we take to go into another country and take what we want. I mean, whether it's America or,
And that's imperialism. And imperialism is motivating conflict. I was in Jerusalem early on, about 40 years ago, and we went to write a book on Jerusalem. So we were interviewing rabbis and imams and priests and people of the street, the lovely, beautiful souls that were living here, there, and everywhere. And they said, what they told us is, we used to, the Palestinians and the Israelis that we met said, we used to be in unity.
Yes.
We used to be in peace.
Yes.
And then came the imperialism. I had profound experiences in Afghanistan on my journey, where I saw so much light and beauty and grace and peace before the imperialism came to take over that land. So
when about was that, do you know?
That was in the late 60s, I think.
So I was just going to say that everything pretty much has happened within the last 50 years. It really has transformed, in our modern day, certainly.
So, but even if you go back and study the history, as we have, because we study religion, so we find that there in the holy spot of Jerusalem, how many wars have been fought? The Jewish people themselves have been, they were called chosen. We don't know what that means. And then how many curses were laid upon them? How much struggle have they had? Then they come out from major struggle in the Holocaust and impose similar behavior towards the Palestinians. Now, it would appear to me, and I lived there, I saw these things happening. But what I would say is that we need to learn from the lessons of what traumas we have endured, and a lot of this has to do with collective and individual unhealed trauma. Once you see where the trauma comes from, then you go inside yourself and become well. You can't help another person until you become healed from that trauma. And it's true of nations. Now we're on the edge where we're almost going to create so many more traumas. We're on the edge of saying, they did this, we did this. And it's not even, they don't even say we did this. Nobody even acknowledges what might have happened when
their own response.
The drone strikes hit those people in their lands, and how that stimulated and fostered the war consciousness. So what I'm saying is not to focus on that, because it's not my field of study. I'm not here, I didn't study war, but I'm aware of it consistently appearing. It shows its face. Okay, at that point, you say, how can I make peace with the world as I know it? How can I find peace in this picture? And this is what's happening now. As much as you watch the news, it's very difficult to watch the news.
Yes.
You cannot deny it. You cannot hold yourself back and not pray for everyone.
That's why it's such a difficult balance to become not in the world, but of the world, and yet still be aware. Because if you're in the world, you get caught up in the drama of it, caught up in the fear of it.
Right.
And if you're of the world, then you can be more of an observer. But at the same time, you have to be in the world in order to find out what it is you need to be observing. So it's a really difficult balance. At least this is what I'm
So words
feeling.
like the sheikhs have said, love all lives as your own. So when you see that someone is suffering, you are empathetic. Your heart goes, your prayers go to them. But you do not go with a gun. You go with a prayer. The prayer is more powerful. And this is exactly what it says in Islam, that dua, or supplication, is the armament of the believer. In other words, our weapon is prayer. What is the weapon for? It's to liberate lives from the darkness, to free souls, to imbibe them, to endow them with consciousness of God's presence, who transcends all this. And everything else will be destroyed, but the power of God will not be destroyed. That's what the Quran is telling us in Surat al-Rahman. It says everything but God will not, endure, but the power of God will endure forever. Now, what the Sufi is doing, or any spiritual traveler, is going into the ocean of God's love, out beyond all limits of our own personal definition. We're, through our prayers, in our invocation, in our service to others, we're diving into the ocean of grace. We're swimming in that ocean, and then we're like, with this water of grace, like washing over us, we're embracing other lives as our own, sharing that light, sharing that grace and beauty. So in the time of every one of the prophets, they faced the same thing. Sometimes their heads were cut off. Did they cease to worship God? No. That's what's called a martyr. That's the real martyr. Not what suicide is forbidden. That's not a martyr's death. That's what we call kufar. It's the ultimate crime is to kill yourself or kill anyone. But when someone, in the name of God, in the way of God, loses their life in this world, then they're elevated into the greater truth, the eternal truth. And so we do not advocate anything but surrender to God and receiving and then giving the grace. If you go into a retreat or into your room, let's say at a time like this, you just don't want to go out. You could just go right in. We saw the news before we left, and we, since that time, have just been traveling without a break and meeting person after person and seeing such beauty in everyone and encouraging the people to become illuminated, to become liberated from this dark perception, from this darkness that seems to be trying its best to dominate the world at this moment. But it will not, and it cannot.
Yeah. There's another thing that I happened to see during the course of the last week was something that made me more aware of what happens when in a group consciousness, where the group can end up distorting what are normally our individual God sense would know to be the moral correctness of behavior, whether it be killing someone or doing something of a negative nature just to another person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the messages I'd like to put out there is to stress how important it is for us to stay within our truth, the truth of what we know to be
absolutely
conscious living, and to shine that. If we can get together in a group that does feel the same way as we do in a positive way to sort of, as you say, transform the consciousness. But I was amazed. I mean, it's that even today, constantly, groups are gathering, and in the context of a group consciousness, moral correctness gets destroyed. I mean, a great example in our lives was what happened in Germany during World War II with the killing of the Jewish population there. But it's happening all the time, over and over again. The groups gather, believing that somehow what they're doing is correct, because in that group is getting people to deviate from what their individual truth
Right.
would let them know this is.
So then our response to that would be just like you're saying, to go deeper and deeper into the ocean of light within ourselves.
Because we got to know
Ocean
that we
of
have
grace.
a personal, that we can do this personally. We don't have
We
to.
have to do it.
Yeah.
We have to do it. And as I said, there's another aspect which strikes me, and it did from a very early age, is the inevitability of death ourselves in our own lifetime. We have a limited amount of time to accomplish this goal, to manifest all the beauty and grace that God has given us. So what you're saying is totally correct. In other words, and I was going to talk about journaling and the journey, because as conscious travelers, we must remember where we have been, where we have come from, where we are going to, and all the blessings that have been given to us in our journey. And sometimes I recommend that people write things down, or at least record them in your consciousness, so that gradually, I would say that if you have a book, it's called a journal, which was very true for me. And on one side you have all the difficulties, and on the other side you have all the blessings in your life. You need to take the blessings and wash away the darkness, the pain, the trauma as you go. Now, in this context, you need to remember what has been told to you by your Lord. What have you seen? How has God manifested to you, for you, in your journey? And if it was one time out of 10,000 memories, that 1 minute is the most sacred moment of your life. Forget the rest, because the power is there that will revive you, that will illuminate you, that will show you why you're here. And I think that a time like this, which is really challenging humanity so greatly, it's a wake-up call for humanity and for every living being in the collective. You're talking about a collective? Okay, the collective. We could say, in the time of World War II, we say the Japanese are the enemy. Were the Japanese the enemy? No.
From their perspective,
There was
we
just
were.
one person may have been leading the country awry. Okay, now I sell beautiful things from both India and China. Sometimes people say, well, if it's from China, it can't be good. That's not true. Many wonderful things are happening in the hearts and souls of the Chinese artisans, but in every place there are leaders that are corrupt. So we cannot call the group the enemy. But if a group of people, like you say, a cult of some kind, is being motivated, guided to do evil, you know that is the opposite of what you have of who you are. So in Arabic they're called the kuffar, the people who are covering up the truth. And I don't know of anyone more than these organizations right now that could be associated with that, only because it is covering up the truth. What is the truth that we're talking about now? That Islam is peace, that we are seeking peace, that we believe that God is most merciful. So at that point, I'm not branding someone, they're doing their thing, but I have no sense of identification with them. I say they believe what they believe, and I believe what I believe, and I believe in the light and the truth that will make us free, and the mercy that will restore us as humanity to holiness, to peace, to life-giving one to another. Now, if we are in a little corner of the world and you and I are talking and then we leave, like where we were a few minutes ago, we saw someone else, and as we move along, we keep meeting people, and everywhere we go, we remember as much as possible that we came here for a purpose, and that purpose is to serve God through His creation, to give life to others, to heal them, to help them, to save them. Then we are on a blessed path, and nothing can stop us, because if they put a gun and shoot us, then we go on to another realm, remembering God. So I think it's very important, and since I came to this awakening at quite a young age, I always feel that every thought counts, that every moment is sacred. Every moment of reflection upon the divine is sacred. That's what makes our life sacred. So the more that we individually and collectively think about God as love, the more that love will filter through us, will rain upon us, and then manifest through us. And so I don't take that personally. That's not what I'm not defining myself, but I'm talking to all of us to do that. I'm saying, can we do this? And what we do every weekend is we go to gatherings every single weekend of the year, basically, where souls gather to reaffirm this.
Right.
And that's where we met. And we did meet.
Right.
And there was a purpose in it. That wasn't for no reason that we went there. How beautiful it was. I remember exactly the minute that I met you.
Yeah.
And right now I have chills from head to toe because of the significance of every moment in our journey.
And that's actually when I began the Bridge of Truth. I was at a convention and met Sheikha Mariam there, and I was filming what would eventually become the very first videos that I posted to this site. I wanted to comment on something earlier that you said before we wrap up.
Sure.
And that is about the idea that in the context of journaling, you put on the one side your blessings and on the other side the negative things. And one of the things that I've learned is that somehow to see that even the negative things as good, that somehow when negative things happen to us, they came for a purpose and they were there to teach us something and to transform it. And that just happened to my sister over the weekend. Mm-hmm. She was sick, horribly sick.
Yes.
And she went to, as a result, was inspired to go to a clinic, a healthcare center near us. And she ended up meeting a doctor that now will be able to help her. Mm-hmm. If she hadn't gotten sick, and she acknowledged this to me, that it was because of the prayer, that if she hadn't gone there, she would have gotten sick, which was a horrible thing to have to endure. She would have met this person who will now help her with other issues that she has in her life and that she has to work through. So all these things that are negative, whether it be wars or conflicts, right, they're all things that are there to teach us what we need to work on so that we can all grow, as you say, and become a conscious traveler.
Yes, and it's extremely meaningful what you say. And there is a surah that we say every day. I know I say it almost every time of prayer. And in that surah, it's called Suratul Inshirah. And it says, surely with difficulty comes ease. Surely with difficulty comes ease. Those are ayahs that are so deeply connected to what we are saying and to what we need to understand. So it's very relevant to the time in which we are to remember that although mankind is facing, almost like a difficulty that we could not even imagine, we have not faced it in our time, in our age. I would say that in any time of any kind of Holocaust, the people were facing it then. And now we're facing it in a variety of ways.
And as you mentioned, we really don't have much time, either individually or as a collective race, because the tools of our destruction, which we have created, enable the destruction to be escalated very, very rapidly. Whether it be environmental, we're now seeing paying the price of what we've, the abuses that we've done to our environment, the abuses politically, the abuses economically, culturally, sexually.
So at that moment that you perceive even any sort of difficulty, seek the ease that is the grace of God. Ask God to show you how to transform that experience individually and collectively. And as a human race, we don't know how we are going to do this, but different spokespeople keep rising up to give different interpretations.
But it seems like things are escalating now, that humanity is being forced to get its act together.
Yes. So, we can't speak for all the millions of beings, but what we can do is take responsibility for our own, blessed life. In other words, realize that it is blessed. Yeah. Realize that we are blessed. And by what? By divine grace, by guidance. Then we need to seek guidance about what we are supposed to do. we can't answer these questions. How can we save even one life? Only by surrendering to the Savior, to the Master, to the Creator, to, the bounteous one. And the more that we turn towards that source, and I think it's very important to realize that when people bow down in prayer, that's what it's all about. It's not political in any way. It's to surrender to the source of infinite
And it's not
grace.
that the prayer has to be any specific form. It's just the act of prayer.
Right.
Coming from an honest heart.
Right. Surrendering to the love, for example. Surrendering to the light. Surrendering to the wisdom. And what Sufis and other people study is all of these divine mysteries, all of the names of God that are resonating right through us, right within us. So the more that you do, abide in a state of remembrance and surrender and praise and then service, the more that life comes to life within you, and it showers through you, it pours through you, and it will not stop there. That's what its nature is. It's to spread throughout the universe. Yeah. And what was said to the Holy Prophet Muhammad, who came to complete the whole line of prophetic legacy, is that he was not sent except to bring mercy to the worlds. Now, let's stay focused on that. As Muslims, as Sufis, as wanderers, as,
whatever your religion
servants
is.
Of God, as meditators, as teachers of children, everyone together who's engaged in an activity that is for the good. It's to save life by life by life. We should all unite in that activity of actually restoring humanity to its original holy state.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's been a wonderful conversation. Is there something perhaps you could read that could to close us out? Perhaps something to summarize what you'd like to teach us today.
Okay. I'm actually going to just continue with the same point here. Yes. It's about this point. That's why I'm reading this, because each one of the wonderful people that I have been with have bestowed knowledge upon me in different forms, and I'm focusing upon the peace message right at this moment, because it's so necessary for us as humanity to attain. Like you say, you watch the news, then look for the peace within yourself. Yeah. Because otherwise we'll all be swept into that, what you called fear, and that
so
terror, that you can say they're terrorists, but then everybody else is filled with terror. That's not the word that we want to focus on. We want to dispel the terror, dispel the fear. Right. The things that change are not our real life. I'll say Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Within us there is another body, another beauty. It belongs to that ray of light that never changes. We must discover how to mingle with it and become one with that unchanging thing. We must realize and understand this treasure of truth. That is why we have come to the world. And here's another quote, and it is from Questions of Life and Answers of Wisdom. One who has not found peace within himself will forever be giving speeches about peace. This world is a pulpit upon which man preaches, and there is no end to this talk. For millions of years, man has been speaking this way, but he has not come forward to first find peace within himself. There is no use in making speeches. Man must acquire the qualities of God and live in that state. Only then can he speak of peace. Only then can he speak the speech of God and dispense the justice of God's kingdom. The prayers you perform, the duties you do, the charity and love you give is equal to just one drop. But if you use that one drop, continue to do your duty and keep digging within, Then the spring of Allah's grace and His qualities will flow in abundance. And this is from Islam and World Peace. Again, explanations of a Sufi. This is the only path on which we can proceed with ease. It is the path to the freedom of our soul. Therefore, may we protect ourselves and give love to others. May we protect others as we would protect ourselves. Love our neighbors as ourselves, and make all mankind our relatives, our brothers and sisters. May we make everyone our loved ones and help them become those who trust in God. May we all go together on this path as the followers of God, as the representatives of God, and as the children of the one Father. Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. If you have faith in that one treasure, which is God, His truth, and the wealth of His grace, if you assume His good qualities and His actions, God will always be with you, whether you feel happy or sad, in sickness or in health, in sunshine or in rain. His wealth will always be yours and will always give you peace, happiness, and comfort anytime you need it. This is the only thing which can protect you and take care of you. Nothing else is of any use. You must therefore have faith in God, the one treasure, who is always with you, who always takes care of you. He is your shade in the heat of the sun. He is an umbrella in the rain and the happiness in your sorrow. He is always there to help you in any situation. Ameen, Ameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, as-sabiqil alawami anwarhu mila samawati, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sabihi adadan rimali wa adadan nujum as-sama'. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin, as-sabiqil alawami anwarhu mila samawati, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sabihi adadan rimali wa adadan nujum as-sama'. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin, as-sabiqil alawami anwarhu mila samawati, sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sabihi adadan rimali wa adadan nujum as-sama'. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala mursalin, walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Amin, Amin, Ya Rabbil Alamin. Peace and blessings, love and light, mercy, wisdom, and grace go before us and guide us on the sacred journey that leads us back to our exalted source. Amen. To everyone who's watching this, I send the love of all who have showered their love upon and through me. And I want to give you contact information so that you can call anytime. The website is www.uniteinthelight.org. Email address baraka@verizon.net. May your journey be blessed, and may the light be with you, and the presence of God's love fill you with His grace, and then may each one of us become the representative of the peacemaker who is the source of all good.
I really want to thank you for making the trip here. I know you had a busy weekend. And for myself, I'd like to hope that everyone that is out there watching us would take a moment to say a prayer, to pray for those who are suffering as a result of the events of the last week, and to also pray for those who are about to make decisions on how we should proceed. So please try to bring some light into both of those for everyone involved and for us too, as we are all servants here and part of the common human experience. So thanks again, Sheikha Mariam. I hope to see you soon. And may all your journeys be truthful till the next time we meet on the Bridge of Truth.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the Bridge of Truth and welcoming us to join you here. It's a great blessing.
That's why we're here. Till then.